zooming in from the United States, and good evening to those joining us in other parts of the world, especially our friends in Romania. It's wonderful to have all of you with us for what promises to be a really terrific program. I am Ruth Katz, Executive Director of the Aspen Institute's Health, Medicine, and Society program. Our program brings together influential groups of thought leaders, decision makers, and the informed public, like yourselves, to consider health challenges facing the United States in the 21st century and to identify practical solutions to them. We are delighted to be partnering with our sister program, Aspen Institute Romania, and presenting and discussing the highly acclaimed and award-winning documentary, Collective. Although deeply disturbing, we hope you enjoyed viewing the film. I know you will enjoy today's conversation about the film, featuring its director and the key players who took part directly in the incredible story the movie unfolds. We'll get underway in just a moment, but first let me thank Magnolia Pictures and Participant Media for making all of this possible. I also want to thank PR Collective, especially Jamie and Renee, with whom we work to bring these special movie events to our Aspen audience. Now, before turning our program over to our moderator, I am pleased to introduce my friend and colleague, Jonathan Price, Director of the Institute's International Partners, for some greetings as well. Jonathan?
Thanks, Ruth. On behalf of the Aspen Institute's network of 12 international partners around the world, it is my true pleasure to welcome you all here today. And a special welcome, as Ruth said, and thank you to Aspen Institute Romania, celebrating its 15-year anniversary this year, for their support and efforts in today's program. As many of you know, Aspen Romania's Arts and Society Award went last year to the Collective documentary, so we're delighted to welcome them to this conversation. The Institute's international partners are on the front lines to spark intellectual inquiry and respond to the need for civil discourse in their societies. Our partners work to create a global community of leaders committed to the greater good and elevate nonpartisan dialogue to address the world's biggest challenges. We are so thrilled to have a global audience here to do just that, bring people together from different sectors and different backgrounds, but addressing a common problem. Thank you for joining us in this discussion. And now back to Ruth to introduce our moderator and start the program.
Thanks, Jonathan. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Margot Sanger-Katz. Margot is a domestic correspondent for the New York Times, where she writes about healthcare for The Upshot, the Times site about politics, economics, and everyday life. Before coming to the Times, she was a reporter at the National Journal and the Concord Monitor, and an editor at Legal Affairs. Margot is also a very, very good friend of the Health, Medicine, Society program. We frequently have requests for Margot to moderate during our events. She never lets us down, for which we are most grateful. Thank you, everyone, near and far in our audience, for joining us. And thank you, Margot, for being here with us as well. The Aspen stage is all yours. Enjoy.
Thank you, Ruthie. This is such a wonderful opportunity to talk about this extraordinary film. And my understanding is that we have a lot of people here in the audience from the United States and Romania and other places. So hopefully everyone will enjoy. I want to just start with a little bit of housekeeping, which is I am going to reserve my moderator's prerogative to ask some questions of our guests. And then after about 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to turn the floor over to you guys to ask your questions of our guests. And so just a technical note, you sort of want to scroll down to the bottom of your screen and you'll see a button that says chat. That's a place where you can type in a question and I will get those questions and be able to relay them to our guests. I think you have a lot of information about these people, and if you've seen the movie, you know quite a lot about them as well. So I'm just going to briefly introduce our panel. We have Alexander Nanau, who is the director and filmmaker, who has also won awards for several other films. We have Vlad Voiculescu, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who is the health minister in Romania and a longtime patient advocate. And Catalin Tolontan, who was one of the key journalists who starred in the film and who investigated the problems with the health system in Romania that were uncovered during the film. So Alexander, I wanted to start with you. Two things really struck me about the way that you made this film. So one is that there was very little narration, very little of your voice. Obviously in the film, you really were kind of in the rooms when things were happening and let the protagonists show us what happened all by themselves. So I'm wondering, first of all, about that choice and why you decided to make the film that way, and also how you were able so early in the unfolding of these events to get the trust of these people to let you in those rooms and see their stories happening in this way.
Right. Yes. Thanks a lot, first of all, for having us and for everybody for organizing this panel. Regarding the filmmaking, the way I do documentaries is basically observational documentaries, which means that I step into the life of characters or of real life people that I'm interested in and follow them for many months and basically shadow their lives without interfering. So I really never stage anything or tell them, could you please stand up or sit down again? Or I just try to work basically like a street photographer in the street. Things are happening and I just try to become invisible in a way, make the people feel as comfortable with me that they tend to forget basically that they are filmed. Because I try to, what I want is to really to capture the authenticity of people and of the situations that I encounter. It was after this collective fire that was really a turning point in the Romanian society, because people realized this club should not have functioned. It had only one exit, and it must have been corruption that made it possible to authorize it by the fire department. So basically, it started the movement of a young generation that said, okay, we are fed up with corruption. It really kills people. That was also the slogan. We had the mass demonstrations, the biggest after the revolution. And it was really a national tragedy. We were all in it. And so we wanted to try to make a film about what was happening in the society. And in parallel to that, basically the government and the healthcare officials, together with doctors, started a manipulation media campaign lying that they can take care of over 180 burn patients, that they can be treated in the normal hospitals, which were a catastrophe in Romania, and they prohibited the families to let their kids fly out to proper burn units, which led to their deaths for many of them. And basically, that was when we realized there was just one group in the beginning of journalists. It was the group around Catalin Tolontan, Mirela Nag, and Răzvan Luțac, who were the first ones to uncover the lies. They uncovered the lie about a burn unit that they were saying they were giving surgery to burn patients. And basically the burn unit was only open for TV cameras several months earlier, but it was closed down. They never made it functional. They just wanted to have an excuse for all the money they invested there. And that's when we realized, let's see if we can shadow these journalists. That would be the best point of view to understand the relationship between power and the people. And so we approached the journalists and found a way to win their trust and to be able to shadow their work that basically started on everything we see in the film once we managed to get access. So we were lucky to be there from the beginning.
Vlad, I wanted to ask you, there was a moment early in your appearance in the film where you sort of say that there just was so much that you didn't know about how the health system was working and the sort of depths of incompetence and corruption that were occurring. I'm just very curious, can you talk a little bit about what your expectations were going into this job and how surprising it was to learn how widespread the problems were? Because as Alexander said, there was some recognition, I think, even going into this crisis, that there were problems. But one thing we see in the film is just that it gets sort of deeper and deeper the more you guys were digging into them. So can you just talk a little bit about where you started and what the process of discovery was like for you?
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks for having us for organizing this, first of all. That was more or less 4 years ago. Before that, I was a banker in Vienna. I left the country when I was 18, and I studied and I worked for 14 years there. And there were like 6-7 years before that that I was what you're calling a patient advocate, meaning that I was literally helping patients get the medicines they need and get access to services they needed either in Romania or abroad. So I had quite direct access to problems that the healthcare system in Romania was encountering. And I also had a bit of a system view, not least through my job. I was a banker, and I was a banker who was financing infrastructure projects, among others, hospitals. So I had a rather good understanding of the financial flows in the system and of the way the various institutions in the healthcare system work. Or don't work. But it was still surprising. And what strikes you being in the Ministry of Health or even the minister, what struck me was first the lack of rules. And one simple example is the way the investments were allocated. So there was no system whatsoever for allocating money. So this leaves lots of space for corruption, lots of space for the minister to do whatever he or she thinks or whatever his or her party considers fit or suits their interest. That's just one example. And the second thing is, beside rules, is the level of administrative capacity, like the level that you were at which you can really maneuver, you can really sail with this big ship called the healthcare system from the Ministry of Health. There are all sorts of things you can pull or push, but it's really I guess devastating would be the word, the right word here, to see that the system is broken on so many levels. And then it's the hypocrisy of the system considering itself more or less self-sufficient. So everybody actually knows what the level of services is, and everybody tries to avoid big chunks of the system for if it's about somebody from the closed ones or somebody they really care about. But at the same time, if somebody is asking for the truth or is presenting the truth, the naked truth, like Catalin Tolontan did back then, and a couple of other journalists and some patient advocates, and or the patients themselves and the families, then the system reacts immediately and reacts rather abruptly and violently. And this, what we've seen in the healthcare system, I guess, was just.
And excuse me, we can see it right now because you are in your office, I think, yes, and you are under the siege right now, yes, because you just starting a war today. In Romania, it's we have a huge problem with the VIP line in order to make the COVID vaccine. Because we wrote 1 week ago about the proportion between the, sorry for my English is rather rusty, between the special center, which are invisible for the public. There are more than 340 this kind of center, and the normal centers, which are 213, that means almost half of the special center figure. And today Vlad came as a minister and said, okay, we will cancel the special center. Yeah.
I can just say what should be done and what I will do where I have the power to do it.
Yeah, but the special center means more than 100 special centers for the army, for the police, and for the secret services. And now you just starting a real war. Yeah.
I made lots of
Because they have the guns, they have the power of fire.
Catalin, as a journalist, it's so wonderful to see a story about journalists who are so good at their jobs and so effective in bringing about change. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about how you came to do this kind of reporting. My understanding is that you began as a sports journalist. So how did you come to be a reporter who was so interested in the health system? And, the film showed so many whistleblowers who took personal risks to tell you what was happening. How were you able to build trust with those people and get them to give you such important information?
Yes, I will try. Just today, Der Spiegel, the news magazine from Germany, wrote something like this. These guys are European heroes. They are not talking about us. And we as journalists, we don't take any credit because we do our job. This is our job day by day. But if we are talking about the whistleblowers, Der Spiegel is right. They are so courageous because it is not their job. It's not in their job description to do something like this, to talk with the media, to talk against their managers. If we are talking about the sport newspaper, this is. I think the Variety wrote about us. This is an incongruent story, and they are right because it's so strange to be a sport newspaper, make some investigation in a healthcare system. But I think it's a huge advantage in time of such high polarization to be a sport journalist. Why? Because when you read a sport newspaper as public, as reader, you are less skeptical. You don't have feeling of a political partisan. You expect to be balanced, the publication to be balanced, and we hope that we are balanced in terms of political left wing or right wing, doesn't matter for us, yes? And I think the second advantage for us of being raised as a sport journalist is that you learn on your own that you can't please everyone. If you allow me, I will give you an example for US. When you write the chronicle of a game between Los Angeles Lakers and Boston Celtics, at least a part will criticize you, strong criticize you, yes?
Yeah.
And I think our job as journalists, not only as sport journalists, is to metaphorically sit in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan, in such day, in a game, football college game, between Michigan and Ohio, which is a big rivalry, it's well known in US, yes. And if you are in the downtown in Ann Arbor with an Ohio newspaper in hands, this is really risky because they put all their passion like tribes, like modern tribes together, and you are in the middle as journalist. And this is a very good training for you in years, and we obtained this in decades. And you are trained not to please the public. And this is very, I think for me, is very important to, because if you are trained not to please the public, then you can resist everybody to every pressure, almost every pressure. Doesn't matter if the government or the pharma companies or the public criticize you on Twitter or Facebook. You are doing your job, you are seeking for the facts, and this is all. It's so simple. If you respect the norms and the standard of our profession.
So I want to make sure that we have time for our audience questions. I have a lot more questions that I wanted to ask, but I think I don't want to hog the entire time that we have together. Can I ask one more question, and maybe each of you could answer it briefly? But you know, the film has this arc of discovery and reform, and then we see that there's an election at the end, and that there perhaps is going to be some repudiation of what you guys were all working towards. I'm wondering whether you think, you know, when you watch the film, or Alexander, when you made the film, do you think about it as an optimistic story or a pessimistic story about the ability of people to make change?
I think definitely about it as an optimistic story, because I learned so much from the characters. And for me as a filmmaker, the story for sure is about journalism, is about the healthcare system, about corruption, but most of all, it is a story in which I was interested in the way the people I followed addressed their own identity, the way they want to be, the life attitude they take, who they want to be in their profession, the journalist, who the minister wants to be as a human being in such a rotten system, and the decision to resist it and the decision to stick to his values. If you see the young burned woman, basically she's saying, I am still the same person. I may be bruised and burned, and you know, other people killed my friends, but I won't let them poison my life. That's who I am. And that was so strong about her, because it goes against any natural reflex of wanting revenge, of wanting to, you know, this person was so, I mean, she was a woman that knew who she is and stood to it. And the same with the parents, you know, the parents, when in the end they put on basically they had the playlist of their son in the car. I didn't know they would put music on, and they're listening to this playlist of their dead son all the time. And that was his favorite song. And for me, it says the same thing. These people did that to us. One day we will, you know, learn who did it, why they did it. But we know who we are, and we know that the most important thing for us still is how we treat each other. We won't let them poison us. So that shows such a resilience of so many people in the film to corruption and to a rotten political class, that we can see it in Romania. It's changing all the time. It's changing with a pace that is, I think, the fastest pace of change you have in a European country. The fact that Vlad is back in the ministry says it all.
Let me start with a question from the audience, and any of you can answer these questions if you have views. This is a question from Lee. She asks, is there anything that you would have done differently if you were to do it over again, now that you have some hindsight? Vlad, do you want to start perhaps? Because now you have another tour as the health minister.
I guess I got a second chance to do things. I'm not sure. I mean, it's 1 month since I took up this role again, and it's not easier. Things have not gotten better in any way. I must say the last 4 years, we've had, you might have heard of the protests in Romania and of the governments we've had, and of the how they tried to make people who had troubles with the law get away with it. So there was a fight. There was a huge fight in the Romanian society. That's basically, I guess, it was prompted by, or it was in any case made way more dynamic by the collective fire and what happened afterwards, the protests. And that year, when we've had in government people who were not politicians, and people could see that things could run a bit differently, at least I hope so. And then we've had pretty much a disastrous governments, a series of them. And then we've had elections, and things have changed, not at the pace that that one would wish, maybe, or that I would have wished, but still, there are some changes. There are some changes in society, and there are some changes in politics. Now we have to make sure that those changes in society, that part of the society that is really awakened and that expects serious differences in the approach, and as that has transformed in some changes in politics, that changes in politics need to be transferred, need to be translated into stronger institutions, a bit more transparency, a bit more people that keep their common sense, even though they are in government, and a series of, I don't know, thousands of other stuff that people are waiting. And I guess yeah, we've got a chance now, but we are battling on several fronts. The COVID-19 crisis doesn't really help. It is just like collective again showing us. It's showing us who we are, both in terms of what our healthcare system can deliver and is capable of, but it's way more than that. It's about society. It's about what Catalin was saying earlier, about people trying to skip the line, skip the queue, and doing it in a sort of an institutional way. That says something about values of a society, but the fact that there are people like Catalin Tolontan and other people that are addressing the issue in society, that gives me, as a politician who wants things differently, that gives me also the opportunity to do what I feel right, and not be a lonely wolf. So I guess we're things are changing, but there is going to be years of pushing before we know that that change is sustainable.
Or generation, but it's okay.
Do you have anything that you would do differently if you were doing this over again, now that you have some hindsight?
May I have the first question? This is the movie about despair or about hope.
Sure, yeah.
And I think for your audience, I can give the audience two examples for the US. A week ago, we saw the first inaugural speech of an American president interrupted to upload the word facts, or facts themselves, as President Biden says. Everybody applauded from the audience when the President-elect Biden at the time, speak about the facts, because we need facts. And for me, those applause of relief, almost of relief, because they almost beg the facts to come among the most powerful people on the planet, show how much we need nonpartisan information. And this is, for my profession, almost a grant, yes. And the second answer is, if I quote Rebecca Solnit book, she wrote about hope and about to be optimistic. She wrote, doesn't mean to stay, to do not involve in anything and to hope that everything will be fine. No, to be optimistic means to be together, to be in such collective style, and maybe if we are fighting, if we are respect the norms, the standards, if we are doing our job, just our job as citizens, yes, maybe we can keep our life together as a community, and we can upgrade our life. This means for me to be optimistical and collective. It's such a thing for me as a journalist and also as a citizen.
I have another question from the audience. This is from Monica, and she wants to ask Vlad and Catalin, is it strange for you now to be a character? Do people recognize you on the street? Is it a new identity for you?
Yeah, but I'll be quick. Yeah, almost as strange as being a politician. I didn't. I'm still getting used to it. Yeah, it's funny, and I guess the funniest question I've got is like, was that really a documentary, or you can tell us? Did you play? I mean, you're good. I mean, you played really well. Well, I didn't play. It didn't work like that. I'm not gifted for anything like that.
Catalin, what has it been like for you?
It's very strange, and it's also risky for us journalists, because if you became a Bigfoot journalist, a Bigfoot reporter, you can go in a shadow. You can talk with somebody without any light among you, and this is strange, and this is harder for us right now, to be honest. Yes, and of course I feel cornered, because every day is too much for us. Everybody, not everybody, but New York Times or Washington Post compare us with Bernstein and Woodward. Oh, okay, this is too much. Really, this is too much, because we don't have the really, because we don't have this kind of skills. We don't have the resources. We don't have proper education for this. But we do our best to day by day to seeking for the facts, not for the truth, because Graham Greene wrote in a book, the truths are for the opinion makers, the facts are for the reporters, and then we are seeking for the facts, not for the truth.
Alexander, I have a question from Mona, who asks, what's the worldwide reaction been like to the release of Collective? I guess she's familiar with the way the film has been received in Romania, but can you talk a little bit about what the response has been?
The response, I think the first time we realized how that the response is the same in all societies, no matter how developed or underdeveloped the democracies were we were showing the film in, it really triggered a fear inside of everybody, even before the pandemic, because we released before the pandemic and traveled a bit the world with the film. And the reaction after the film is almost the same. You know, it's quite like in a church for minutes. And you can feel that people are angry and think the same thought. They really took the power away from us over our own lives. We lost the control over our lives. How could that happen? No, it's everywhere the same, and that because the world is the same. You know, when we filmed the film in 2016, we realized that the whole world around us was transforming into this world of populists, of corruption, of lies, of manipulation. It started with Brexit, went on with Duterte, Trump, and basically everybody started living with this fear that tomorrow you could wake up and your democracy doesn't work anymore. Somebody is doing things that will really harm citizens. And right now, I feel that we are all starting to shift. We learned a lot during the last 4 years, right? And we're starting to shift slowly back, but I'm expecting the evil powers, let's say, to strike back again really hard. So without wanting to be too pessimistic, I'm really curious how much time Vlad will have until they will start their whole propaganda machine again to denigrate him because he is again saying the truth. Like, guys, you cannot jump over the line. You cannot be VIPs that get the vaccine before the vulnerable. Don't do that. I will investigate it. And then today the whole press writes, the minister is menacing the population. The minister wants to harm you. The minister wants to harm the best vaccine campaign we had. So I think we can be prepared, even in the States now, for the Republicans to push back in ways that no one can imagine.
Catalin, did you want to say something?
Yes, I read information just yesterday from Canada. Two guys are going in the Inuit community, a small Inuit community with only 100 people to get the vaccine, yes?
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
they got it. Okay, here in Romania, even if we are a European country, they got more than 100 small community together, institutional, yes, official, but against the law, because this is not the law. This is only their will to do that, this kind of things. 100 special center only for the army. Because why? Because the army have the management of the whole process of immunization in Romania for I think 4 months, something like this.
So I hate to do this, but I think that we are running out of time. I really enjoyed the film, and I really enjoyed talking with all of you about it. And it seems like there are a lot of good stories to report ahead and some challenges in public health for you, Vlad. So I look forward to seeing what comes next. Thank you to our guests, and thanks very much to the audience for offering some good questions. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get to all of them. Take care, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.